I walked onto my porch and saw neon yellow arrows stabbed into the dirt like somebody was marking a crime scene, all of them pointing straight at my locked ranch gate. Then my phone buzzed with an email that made my stomach drop. Reservation confirmed, 150 guests. And that's how I found out someone had booked my private land for a realtor caravan without asking me once. I live out on the edge of a newer development in rural Texas, the kind of place where you buy acreage because you're tired of hearing other people's lawnmowers. My driveway is long, my gate stays shut, and the best part of my day is usually the quiet. Except the quiet never seems to matter to a homeowners association. The neighborhood next door has an HOA, and I've always known they were intense, but my property isn't in their boundaries. I don't pay their dues, and I sure as hell don't answer to their rule book. That morning I did what anyone would do. I walked down to the gate and stared at it like it might start talking. The arrows were real, the email was real, and the GPS pin on my phone was sitting right on top of my gate like it belonged there. A car rolled up before I even finished my coffee. A woman in a blazer leaned out her window, smiling like she was at an open house, and said, "Hi, is this the check-in point?" I blinked at her. "No, this is my gate." She looked down at her phone again, then back at me like I was the one glitching. "But the route says we meet here. We've got a big group coming, and I'm telling you it's private property," I said, keeping my voice calm because it wasn't her fault. Yet. "There's no event here. Turn around." She pulled off slowly, still confused, and that's when my neighbor Mark came rumbling up in his pickup like he'd smelled trouble from 2 miles away. Mark didn't even ask what was going on. He just stared at the arrows, lifted his phone, and started taking pictures. "This is HOA Energy," he muttered. "Document everything, Ethan. They don't stop once they start." I checked the email again, scrolling past all the cheerful event language: arrival window, parking guidance, refreshment station. Like my gate was a venue entrance and not my actual boundary line. The sender name finally hit me in the face: Karen Whitman. And underneath it in bold, like it was supposed to scare me into obedience, President Homeowners Association. I didn't even respond at first. I just laughed once, short and humorless, because of course her name was Karen. Of course she had a title. Of course she thought my gate was a suggestion. I walked back to my garage, grabbed a big piece of cardboard, and wrote in thick black marker, "No event access. Private property trespassers will be reported." Then I zip-tied it to the gate where nobody could pretend they didn't see it. By noon, the trickle of cars turned into a steady stream. SUVs, sedans, a couple of white Realtor fleet cars with logos on the doors. Every few minutes, someone would pull up, slow down, stare at the sign, and either leave or sit there like waiting for a manager to come out. And then Karen showed up. She stepped out of a black SUV, dressed like she was about to do a ribbon cutting. Crisp blazer, perfect hair, a binder tucked under her arm like it was the Bible. She walked right up to my gate, didn't read my sign, didn't even look at me. At first, just started talking to the little crowd behind her like she was already in charge. "Okay, everyone, small delay," she called out, bright and chirpy. "We'll get this sorted, just hang tight." I took one step forward. "Karen." She turned her head like I'd interrupted her TED Talk. "Ethan, hi, we need you to open the gate." The way she said it, not asked, not suggested, like I was an employee who'd forgotten his duties. "I'm not opening anything," I said. "You scheduled a whole event on my property without permission." Karen sighed, slow and dramatic, the kind of sigh meant for an audience. "It's not your property in the way you think. This is part of the community access route." "No," I said flat. "It's my deed, my fence line, my lock, and my liability." Her smile tightened. "The Homeowners Association has rights. The CC and RS don't apply to me," I cut in. That made her eyes sharpen like she'd found the real problem. Not the misunderstanding, not the logistics, the fact I wasn't falling into line. Karen leaned closer to the gate and lowered her voice like she was doing me a favor. "This event helps property values. Your attitude doesn't." I stared at her for a beat, then nodded toward the cars behind her. "Tell your guests to leave. Right now." And for a second she didn't move. She just stood there with that Karen look, the one that says I'm not used to hearing no. Then she lifted her binder like a shield and said louder for everyone to hear, "He's refusing community access. We may have to escalate." Escalate. Like I'd committed a violation by locking my own gate. That night, after the last confused realtor finally drove away, I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop open, staring at the reservation email again. My head hurt in that dull, angry way that doesn't let you sleep. I'll admit it, for a minute I considered letting it go. Not because I thought she was right, but because I knew what fighting an HOA looks like. Endless emails, fake authority drama dressed up as policy. Then I pulled up my insurance policy and imagined a stranger stepping onto my land, tripping, breaking an ankle, suing me into the ground, because Karen wanted a convenient photo op route. Nope, I wasn't going to keep the peace with my own property on the line. The next morning my phone buzzed again. This time it was a forwarded email that Karen clearly thought was the knockout punch. County consent approved. It said complete with an official-looking seal and a neat little signature line, except the signature wasn't mine. And the consent wasn't real. I printed it out and drove straight to the county permits office because if there's one thing I've learned, it's that paperwork fraud stops being cute the second it hits a government desk. A woman behind the counter. Linda Parker, the kind of person who's seen every scam twice, took one look and didn't even blink. She leaned in, scanned the header, clicked around on her screen, and said, "This didn't come from us." I felt my jaw tighten. So it's fake. It's not just fake. Linda said, calm as a surgeon, "It's forged. Whoever sent this copied a seal image and formatted it to look official. The email domain isn't county. It's a neighborhood newsletter system." I didn't even feel shocked at that point. I felt clear. Like the fog burned off and all that was left was a straight line from Karen's ego to my gate. On the way home, I called the non-emergency number for the sheriff's office and told them exactly what was happening. Private property, unauthorized event, forged county consent, GPS pin directing strangers to my gate. The dispatcher didn't sound amused. She sounded interested. Mark came over that afternoon and helped me gather everything: photos of the arrows, screenshots of the GPS, listing copies of the emails, the fake county consent. He even drove down the road and photographed a banner Karen's people had zip-tied to a utility post like it was a sponsored festival. "Feels insane," Mark said, shaking his head, "like they're building a stage and you're the villain for not starring in it." "Yeah," I said, "except the stage is my property line." Karen tried calling me after that and I let it go to voicemail. Then she texted like she was doing customer service. "Let's resolve this amicably. HOA has documentation. We have 150 registered. Please cooperate." Registered. Like my ranch was a restaurant and she'd put my gate on open table. I didn't answer. I just saved it. The morning of the event, I woke up early, made coffee, and stood by the window like I was waiting for a storm to hit. The sky was still gray, quiet enough to hear birds. Until I heard engines. The cars came first, same as before, a parade of realtor SUVs creeping up my road. But this time, there was a new vehicle mixed in, a locksmith van. It pulled right up to my gate like it belonged there. The guy stepped out with a clipboard and a tool bag, glanced at my sign, then looked around like he expected someone to wave him in. And then Karen's SUV rolled up behind him, perfectly timed, because of course it did. Karen got out smiling like she'd finally brought the adult to handle my attitude. "Great," she said, clapping once. "We'll get that lock off and keep the schedule moving." I walked out onto this gravel, slow and steady, and said, "Hey, you touching my lock?" The locksmith looked relieved to see a person. "I've got a work order," he said, holding up the clipboard, "to remove the lock. They told me it's HOA-controlled access." I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. "Do you have written permission from the property owner?" He hesitated. "They said." "I'm the property owner," I said. "So unless my name is on that paper with my signature, you cut that lock and you're committing a crime." Karen's smile twitched. "Ethan, don't be dramatic. We're on a timeline." I turned toward her, and it felt like the entire line of cars behind her leaned in to watch. "You forged a county consent email, Karen. You pinned my gate as a public check-in. Now you're hiring someone to break into my property." Her face hardened instantly like the mask fell off. "We have rights." "No," I said. "You have a binder." Right on cue, because somebody up there loves timing. A patrol car rolled up behind the locksmith van, tires crunching on the gravel. Deputy Grant stepped out, hand resting near his belt, eyes scanning the crowd like he'd done this 100 times. I handed him a folder I'd prepared like I was turning in a homework assignment. Photos, emails, forged consent, the GPS pin listing, Karen's text about 150 registered. Deputy Grant flipped through it calm, methodical, then looked at the locksmith. "Sir, do you have authorization from the property owner?" The locksmith swallowed. I thought the HOA. Deputy Grant nodded once. "This owner says no. If you cut that lock, it's trespass and criminal mischief. You understand me?" "Yes, sir," the locksmith said, fast stepping back like the lock was suddenly radioactive. Karen stepped forward, voice rising, trying to take control of the scene. "Deputy, this is a community matter. He's obstructing a scheduled—" Deputy Grant held up a hand without even looking at her. "Ma'am, this is private property. You don't have consent, you don't have a permit, and this document you're waving around looks like fraud." The line of cars behind her started to murmur, phones coming out, heads turning. Realtors don't like surprises that look like police reports. Karen's cheeks went pink. "This is ridiculous," she snapped. "He's sabotaging an event that benefits everyone." I kept my voice low, almost bored, because the truth didn't need volume. You benefited yourself. You didn't ask. You didn't care. And you tried to force it anyway. Deputy Grant turned to the crowd and said, "All vehicles need to leave this road. Now. This is not an approved gathering. If you remain, you may be cited for trespass." People started backing up immediately, doing awkward three-point turns like the whole thing suddenly smelled expensive. Karen stood there for half a second, frozen, still trying to compute that the world wasn't bending around her. Then Deputy Grant looked straight at her and said, "Ma'am, I need your ID." That was the moment. Her eyes flicked around, searching for backup, for authority, for someone to validate her. And all she got was a locksmith pretending he'd never met her and a line of realtors driving away like she'd just tanked their Saturday. She handed over her ID with shaking fingers, still muttering about rights and the association. But the words sounded smaller now, like air leaking out of a balloon. I watched Deputy Grant write his notes, watched Karen's mouth open and close with nothing useful coming out, and for the first time in days, my chest didn't feel tight. A week later, I got a copy of the complaint number, and Mark forwarded me a screenshot from the HOA meeting agenda, emergency vote removal of president for misconduct. Karen didn't get to escalate anymore, and the lesson is simple. If you don't defend your boundaries, someone with a binder will try to rewrite them for you.